Okay, in this short lecture, we're going to do the neuron. Now remember, the neuron, the neural system, is composed of a neuron and a neural glial cells. The neuron is the only cell that's electrically excitable. The neural glial cells, they should sound a little bit familiar, where you'll learn about the oligodendrocytes and the Schwann cells and the ependymal cells and the astrocytes and satellite cells. So you'll learn about a bunch of those neuroglial cells, which means nerve glue. It holds the neurology together. So when we look at a neuron, the three main parts to understand, this is the cell body, also known as the soma, and these branches leading into it are called dendrites. And this one long cylindrical structure leading away from the cell body, you see the arrow going away, this is an axon. And at the very end of the axon are these axon terminals. And at the end of the axon terminal is a synaptic end bulb. And what's stored here in these synaptic end bulbs, they look like a light bulb, right? These synaptic end bulbs are neurotransmitters. And these neurotransmitters can be released as a chemical messenger to the next structure that tells it to turn on or to turn off. Maybe it's going to send a stimulatory message or an inhibitory message. I'll give you an example. A neurotransmitter that can be released that's excitatory, especially at the muscle, you guys already learned it's acetylcholine. If we want to get up in the morning and get up bright and early, jump out of bed, excited, ready to take on the day, that's a neurotransmitter called glutamate. Glutamate is a stimulatory, excitatory neurotransmitter that helps you get up in the morning. If you're having trouble and you're the snooze button hitter, like, oh, 5 more minutes, oh, 2 more minutes, I don't want to get up, you have a glutamate issue. You don't have enough glutamate to get you up in the morning. Glutamate is the flower opening up in the morning when the sun rises. But as the day progresses and it gets evening and nighttime, you should get tired and want to go to bed. Glutamate gets converted to another neurotransmitter called GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid. That's GABA. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. That's what helps you sleep at night. So if you have no problem getting up and have no problem going to sleep, then glutamate and GABA are healthy. If you have trouble going to bed because your brain is too stimulated and you can't get your thoughts down, then that means you're lacking GABA, but you have too much glutamate. If you get up in the morning and you're tired, you have too much GABA, but not enough glutamate. So that gives you an idea as to how these neurotransmitters work. Remember, they're proteins, so they're made here by the endoplasmic reticulum and the ribosomes. Remember all that? Okay. So main structures are dendrites, cell body, nucleus. Here, this is the axon. This structure here is the axon hillock. It's the dilated part, the axon hillock. It's the dilated portion. Then right here is what's called the trigger zone. The trigger zone is like, boom, it's where the action potential begins. Boom, and it goes right down the axon. The axon is myelinated. In the peripheral neural system, it's myelinated by something called a Schwann cell. That's what myelinates in the PNS. At the very end, we have the synaptic, or we have the axon terminal and the synaptic end bulbs at the very, very bottom. And then it's going to synapse with another axon, another dendrite, or some structure, right? It's the relay. Okay, so let's look here at this. So here is a neuron. And just to kind of put it in perspective, this is the cell body, or the soma. The dendrites are listed here. These are the gray extensions. Here is the axon. Here's the axon hillock. Here's the trigger zone, also known as the initial segment, aka trigger zone. This was cut right here. This should be glued or extended to right there. So here's the axon cut, here's the rest of the axon, but to fit it in the view, they just cut it, right? But otherwise, it would look something like this, right? You'd have the cell body, the dendrites, the axon, and the rest of the axon here. But in this view, just to put it in perspective, they cut it. So we have the dendrites. These are the axon terminals of other neurons, right? So in this picture here, where this was connecting to this box is the synaptic end bulb or the axon terminal. That's what we're seeing here, axon terminal. That's the axon terminal. These are the dendrites. This is the cell body known as the soma. Here's the nucleus. Here's the axon hillock. Here's the trigger zone, aka initial segment, and here is the axon. When we look at the axon further, we can see that this structure on the outside is myelin. This is the insulator. Remember I showed you earlier in another video when Schwann cells myelinate in the peripheral neural system, that's what this black insulation is to protect the delicate wires that are deep to it. So the Schwann cell produces myelin. That's what this is on both sides, myelin or myelin sheath. All this is myelin. This is a nucleus of a Schwann cell here and here. This entire structure is a Schwann cell, and then this is a Schwann cell. Between the two Schwann cells, you can see they connect right here. That's called the node of Ranvier. So electrical conduction, the action potential is going to move down the myelin, and when it gets to the end, boom, it leaps to the next Schwann cell. And myelin is needed to speed up the action potentials. And the action potentials literally leap over the node of Ranvier. They jump from one axon to the next. They call that saltatory conduction. Saltare means to leap or to jump. Here is another model of a dendrite. Of a neuron. These branches are dendrites. The term dendrite literally means branches in Greek. It comes from the word dendra, which means tree or branches. Here is the cell body. Here is the nucleus. The dilated part is the axon hillock. And then the trigger zone, which is the initial segment. These are axons here in the center. The axons are protected by the myelin, which is produced by the Schwann cell. These are the nuclei of the Schwann cells. Here's a close-up view of all the same structures again. Nothing new here. Here's the axon terminal. Here's the dendrites. Here's the axon hillock. Here's the initial segment. These are axons. Here's the node of Ranvier, which is the space or the gap between the two Schwann cells. Here's the myelin. And then let me just see if there's anything else here. Don't worry about axodendritic or axosomatic. Really, these are the axon terminals or the end bulbs. And that's where the neurotransmitters are stored. You could see it in this cut right here. These little vesicles are storing neurotransmitters. That's all. And then much like when you covered muscle, you learned that there was an endomysium, epimysium, and perimysium. Here is the endoneurium. This is the protective layer around this axon here. That's an endoneurium. Here you can see the endoneurium here as well. Okay, so this video just covers the neuron. You should also review the structure and function of neuroglial cells, but that would be more for lecture than for lab.